I'm honored to invite Aditya Ghosh for a keynote address on this topic. Aditya Ghosh is a member of the board of directors of Oyo Hotels and Homes, one of the world's leading hospitality chains, with a presence across 80 countries. He is one of the founders of Ashoka University and also a member of the board of advisors at Center for Creative Leadership. Prior to this, Aditya has had multiple roles as a CEO of large consumer-facing businesses with complex operations including Oyo Hotels and Homes India and South Asia and Indigo. Aditya is a key supporter of the startup world through his investment arm, Homage Ventures, and is a member of the advisory board and an investor at the Fireside Ventures, a leading venture capital firm. Aditya has practiced law at the prestigious corporate law firm J. Sagar Associates and then as general counsel at Interglobe Enterprises. Aditya was appointed as Knight in the National Order of Merit by the President of France. He has been named by the World Economic Forum as one of the young global leaders, ranked 27th globally in the Fortune magazine's Elite 40 Under 40 list, and has been on Fortune India's 40 Under 40 list 3 years in a row. He was also honored with the People's CEO Award at the NHRDN People CEO Conclave in 2016. He has been a member of the main jury of the St. Gallen Wings of Excellence Award at the St. Gallen Business School in Switzerland. Aditya has been named Businessman of the Year by GQ, an extraordinary individual in the business category by Vogue. Welcome, Aditya. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you very much. Thank you for that very long introduction. Well, I'm really, honored and privileged to be here. Big supporter of Ashoka University. I think more than supporter, a big fan of what the Ashoka University does, stands for, and is continuing to do. I caught the tail end of the previous session with some obviously phenomenal speakers, some of them being my friends like Deep Kalra, Sangeeta Reddy, Vinita Bali, who I have a lot of respect for. So, and almost everything that they said, and Sangeeta had kind of, summarized it. It's so relevant. What I propose to do is just kind of take a more practical look and probably speak more to the HR professionals and CEOs and leaders who are looking at reshaping their organizations, as well as a lot of the young workforce. And over the last 20 years, I've had the opportunity to work with a very young workforce in all of the businesses that I've been involved in. And when they kind of think about what's in store for them and what are some of the skills and ways of thinking that they need to adapt to as they kind of make sure that they stay relevant in the months and years coming ahead. So the way I kind of look at it is that first of all, the current crisis, and I know it's a very often used term, but I don't see it as a black swan event. And why I say that, and why I start off with a somewhat provocative statement, is that we have to step back and ask ourselves that was this an event which was completely out of our realm of imagination, and could we just not have prepared at all, versus kind of looking at whether, irrespective of what the event was, could we have been better prepared as companies, as individuals, as nations, towards mitigating some of these sort of unforeseen risks. It's largely felt that as we go forward, many of the tail end risks will become here and present. And of course, in this case, there were many leading experts, and not just something buried in some research organization somewhere. Some of the most important leaders in the world had been warning us of something like this. So I kind of have written about this in the Fortune magazine some weeks ago, that I see it as a gray swan event, that even though we may not know what is the exact nature of a crisis that we will face, it does give us lessons of how to get prepared in the future, whether tomorrow it may be an environmental crisis, it may be a humanitarian crisis, it may be an economic crisis, or for that matter, it may be an earthquake or whatever that may bring us to a standstill. How do we as a world kind of are able to better prepare ourselves, and more importantly, as individuals, of course? I feel that there are 4 stages to any of these crises. There is acknowledgement, and then there is trying to contain the impact of that crisis, leading to looking at ways to survive. And I think we're probably somewhere between that containment and survival. And only then do we start talking about recovery as such. Even though acknowledgement seems like a very motherhood statement, all we have to do is look around us and look at the last, say, 120 days and see that how much time we as individuals, as organizations, and even some countries took to really acknowledge the scale of the problem. So, but what's important for us to acknowledge is that this is not just another economic crisis. It's actually not even, something like what the Great Depression was in the late 1920s, or certainly not the 2008, 2009 crisis that most of us have seen. And the lingering impact of this crisis will be much, much longer than what we have seen in the past. And that's why I call it not just a large crisis, but an unprecedented one. An unprecedented one, not just in terms of scale, but if you kind of think back, I think ever since the last maybe ice ages, we have never seen as a planet a crisis of this kind, which has impacted all parts of the world almost equally at the same time. Anything that we have seen in the past, there have been peaks and troughs, and there have been certain areas of the world which have been more impacted than others, certain classes or strata of society which have been more impacted than others. But even the Second World War did not impact the whole world simultaneously as this crisis is impacting us. And this is not just an economic crisis, but it is a humanitarian and a social crisis. And we must understand that when we as individuals and organizations start responding to this, we must keep in mind that we are not going to be doing a good enough job if we see this as just a response to an economic crisis and ignore the humanitarian and social aspects of it. So what is our plan? First of all, we cannot live on hope. We have to, hope is certainly not a plan. So we've got to plan for the worst and kind of hope for the best, really. And some of the ways that I think about it is that to first reflect back, and especially now let's talk about as businesses and organizations, that what is mission critical. When we are in the midst of a challenge like this, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by all the different things, all the different balls that are up in the air, and all the daily fires that we have to fight. And you're trying to do everything, and you're trying to run a little bit faster, and so on and so forth. But actually, what my suggestion would be is to focus on what is really mission critical, and then try to make a distinction between what to focus on versus, as they say, often it's more important to know what not to do. Let me give you an example. For instance, if I was running the airline Indigo, and I ran that for about 10 years, if I was in a meeting with my most key leaders and the leadership team, and I went around the table and I asked them, look, tell me, what are all the things that are not working, or what are all the things that we've got to improve upon? Chances are that I would have heard that, look, Aditya, the check-in lines are becoming too long, or the planes are getting dirty, or the fares are not really keeping up, or we don't have enough traffic. There's a shortage of pilots, so there is this bad weather, and we're not getting slots in some of the major airports, and so on and so forth. But what I would always ask myself every day is, have we paid for the airplanes? Have we paid for the fuel? Have we paid the airport charges? Do we have 2 pilots and 4 flight attendants on every flight? If these 5 very important things, which are mission critical, were not in place, then I could have had the shortest check-in line and the fastest check-in process and the best food and the cleanest carpets and the best schedule. That plane isn't moving. That airline will come to a halt. Therefore, while all of those things which were suggested by my colleagues were extremely important, and some of them were blazing fires on a day, if we lose our focus on what is mission critical, it is very easy to get lost and get overwhelmed by the crisis. And that then leads us to kind of figuring out, we as leaders and us as organizations, that this is not the time to go experiment. This is the time to go get the basics right over and over again and make sure that we stay true to what we started off with by doing. Which then leads me to another important aspect. And I'm involved a lot in early stage companies and the startup world, and a lot with many young professionals and colleagues, literally thousands of them. And I've noticed that hustle is something that is almost worn like a badge. Everybody's hustling. I'm actually not a fan of hustle at all. I'm a big fan of agility. I think hustle is like, you're standing in the street corner and you want to make a little bit of money and you go rob somebody's wallet. That is temporary, that makes you cut corners, and hustle is not scalable. On the other hand, agility is what drives you to understand how the playing field is changing, how the battlefield is changing, how the circumstances are changing on you, and whether you have the ammunition, and whether you have the strategy, and whether you have the tactics to make, quick decisions which do not make you lose focus of that final summit that you need to climb, and yet are able to take tactical decisions on a day-to-day basis. So I'm a big fan of agility, and that is something that would be a strong piece of advice from me, that when we look at newer team members, or if you are someone who's building your career, then please focus on agility more than hustle. When we talk about products and services, I believe that the current COVID crisis has put some artificial restrictions. You cannot travel, you cannot move out of your house, you can't go to work, you can't meet your friends, and so on and so forth. But that doesn't take away certain fundamental needs of a human being. And therefore, a motherhood statement, but a true fact is that even once the crisis is over, and even during the crisis, there are some fundamental needs of a human being which still need to be addressed by great products and high quality services. But there is also another fundamental need, which is to conserve cash. So therefore, if you're trying to grow your business, and if you're trying to find a way to make yourself continue to be relevant in the life of the consumer, then again, my second strong piece of advice would be that we focus on the affordable segment of the market. We focus on the affordable part of the product and service spectrum, because that is what's going to lead the recovery first. Now, there is one exception, of course. The exception is that if it was something which is such a scarce product or service that it is not available anywhere else, and that kind of plays to a fundamental need of a consumer, then of course it doesn't have to be affordable, and you can charge a really, really premium price for it. But those opportunities will be few and far between. And I think any product or service that continues to rely a large part of their survival on discretionary spending will face extreme pressure. Because we must not forget that why we can afford to talk about recovery, especially in a country like India, is that we are still a supply constrained Indian market, and that fundamental of the Indian market has not changed. And therefore, if you are in a product and service that is answering to that core need of a consumer, then there are enough economic opportunities. Now, in this, the role of the leader and especially the role of senior leaders or team leaders and managers is to stay calm and focused, like I spoke about, but also to be patient and empathetic. And empathetic is very simple. Are we putting ourselves in the shoes of our consumer? Are we putting ourselves in the shoes of the customer? Are we putting ourselves in the shoes of our colleagues and employees? If we are, that is empathy. And if we ignore our customers and our colleagues, then we are surely going to end up leading an organization that's going to start fragmenting very, very soon. So in all of this, what is changing? There are lots of things that are changing, but there are things that are changing in terms of an organization culture and the skills that are required too. So first of all, when you're working from home, then the way that you used to often judge the hard work of one of your colleagues, he was the first guy to show up and she was the last person to leave, and I would always drive in and see that car parked in parking slot number 1 in the upper basement. All of that is gone because you don't know when someone's waking up or when someone is going to sleep. So the way we measure hard work has to be more outcome driven. I think Deep was mentioning it in the previous session, as opposed to being effort driven. So that is going to be change number 1. Number 2 is that you would have to find new ways to keep your ears to the ground and be able to keep your finger on the pulse of your organization, because you will not be able to kind of just go and find out what's happening in the rumor mill and who's saying what and what do people think about your organization and so on and so forth, because all of that is now converted to an online and a social medium. And you will have to find new ways to keep yourself on the ear to the ground. I was hearing about Instagram. I'm a big fan of Instagram, and I am very active on it because over the last 5 to 6 years, I've seen that is a tremendous medium to be able to stay connected to literally tens of thousands of colleagues and tens of thousands of people and customers across, and it's something which is authentic, and it is something that the more real you are, people are able to see you and they're able to connect you, and you're able to inspire people and learn from people in just absolutely unique, instantaneous ways. I remember when I was at law firm J. Sagar Associates, one of my most fun memories is when I skipped work in the middle of the afternoon and went and saw a movie, and it was that thrill of being able to do it without anybody else getting to know, and so on and so forth. All that is gone because you're not at work in anymore in any case. But that then puts a burden on leaders like us to be able to find a way so that we are able to be respectful to the private space and time of all of our colleagues who are actually working from home. So in all of this, then how do you judge hard work? Because you can't see them. You don't know how many hours they're sleeping, when they started work, when they ended, whether they were watching a movie in the afternoon or snoozing. So efforts and that effort-driven organizations will have to very fast be replaced by outcome-driven organizations. Now, this is easier said than done. This is easier in the senior levels. When you come down to very, very junior levels, you will, if you can't see somebody visually, if you can't see how they're, what is the kind of work that they're doing and so on and so forth, and there is a large team, let's say it's in a call center or in the front office, or you're in the airport, or you're in a shop retail floor, and there are lots of people doing similar jobs, it is very difficult to judge what is the outcome of a particular individual. And while it is important to see that the whole team wins, when appraisal time comes, you will have to judge that individual's performance. And therefore, it is very important to have targets and goals and appreciation and guidance for individuals. So goal setting and target setting will throw up new challenges in this new environment. The second is, from being in fixed roles which were relevant in the pre-COVID world, a lot of those roles you will see people switching. I mean, let's say if you were a large offline sales-driven organization and you move dramatically to online delivery, a lot of the offline sales team will have to move to online sales roles. Or for that matter, you will have a lot of places where people will have to do multiple jobs and multiple roles, and they will have to swing from one to the other. that will need massive amounts of agility in that individual and massive amounts of agility even in the organization. But there is one other thing. Some of the most prized roles, I mean, let's think about large FMCG companies with massive sales forces, and the regional sales manager of a state and a zonal sales manager of a state would be a very, very important job. All that is going to disappear. You're not going to have massive sales forces. You probably may not need as many zonal or regional managers, because a lot of it is now digital and online delivery. So when you're coming out of business school, and if you're starting off your career, or you're in your mid of your career, or you're even senior in your career, and you thought, yes, this is that prized role that I really wanted to do, I'm the infantryman, I'm the artillery guy in the army, and suddenly the army switches to a more digital warfare and a chemical warfare. Suddenly infantry and artillery drop down the value chain, and therefore one has to again make sure that you are quickly able to adapt to new skills too. So one has to reorganize to stay relevant as organizations in the hands of the consumer, in the life of the consumer, because the consumer is still going to look to you to meet his or her fundamental needs, but in a very, very different way. So large companies have to reorganize themselves, and some of those old job descriptions don't apply anymore. You'll have to kind of come up with new ways to deliver on that. So we need a new breed of leaders. And that new breed of leaders will have to communicate with their employees, but communicate with their employees on a continuous basis. You cannot wait for one employee event once in a year or once in 6 months. It needs to be continuous engagement, because the world is going to move that much faster. And the competition is certainly not going to be large companies. The competition is going to be a lot of young, smaller companies who are going to be able to deliver on niche, areas of your business, and keeping that large employee workforce motivated and informed with continuous engagement is going to be extremely important. And finally, I think social responsibility, I call it the 2% problem. We have a problem on our hands. The problem on our hands is that because as most CSR funds are limited to 2% of the revenue line, you end up spending 2% of your effort and 2% of your mind share on actual social responsibilities. And we have to find a way to completely change the way we do business, because the way business has been working so far, which has been this unidirectional kind of pursuit of profit, is completely broken. And we need a more conscious capitalism so that we can hold on to some of the unintended benefits which have come out of this crisis, whether it is a cleaner work environment, whether it is a cleaner, climate, whether it is, the opportunity of being able to run a sharper ship. So there are many opportunities that have come out of this crisis. And that's this opportunity to change, the opportunity to get better is staring at us. Whether it is internal things like sharpening the cost focus and making sure that our teams and our organizations and our products and services are more focused on the consumer's needs. To, for instance, we will suddenly be able to see, even from an employee workforce point of view, I am very, very, keen to see massive changes in the way the demographics of the workforce changes. Today with life expectancy, the way it has improved, 60 is no age to retire. So you will be able to access a lot of really highly experienced men and women who may have retired from their current roles or at the close of retirement, but they have other personal constraints because of which they will not be able to move cities or move jobs, and you'll be able to tap in to that workforce, very highly experienced and wise workforce that is sitting at home. Or for that matter, women, because of the kind of massive amounts of other domestic responsibilities that they have, and family leadership roles that they adopt to, that's another workforce that will be available. So there will be in fact an expansion of the pool of talent from where organizations can pick up colleagues and team members. And of course, this crisis has also shown that, that none of us is an island, like that famous butterfly effect. There might be some environmental crisis, health crisis, economic crisis that emanates from a particular small little region in some part of the world, and it can rapidly, impact and in some really crazy ways all around the world. And therefore, as they famously say, you cannot let a crisis like this go waste. We cannot afford to go back to the way things were. I hope like hell that we do not go back to what we thought was normal. What we thought was normal is not normal. We cannot have a situation where we are in a unidirectional, pursuit of material, success, and forget about, what is happening in the rest of the world. So the last, urgent cry and clarion call that I have to make is that all of us need to work urgently towards a more equal world, work urgently towards a more healthier planet, work urgently to provide products and services which are more socially conscious and be able to nudge people to make, more healthy and conscious, socially conscious choices. And in that, I hope, all of you stay safe and don't forget to smile and chase your dreams. And thank you for having me here. Like I said, I'm very active on Instagram, so please feel to follow me there and reach out. I love to listen to youngsters and people telling me, giving me new ideas. I enjoy every time I come to Ashoka University and teach a class here or get involved. So thank you once again for having me here, and wish all of you a great weekend and wish all of your loved ones a safe many months ahead.
Thank you for that very insightful session, Aditya. As you rightly pointed out, our current crisis will have a lasting impact, and organizations will need to be mindful of the pandemic being a humanitarian and social crisis and not just an economical one. Redefining work will need agile teams who can hustle. Our road to recovery is to be paved by compassionate leaders who can focus and solve problems, but also empathize with changing work structures. Thank you so much for being on this show. It's been a wonderful talk by you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.